Hello, everyone, and welcome to TBR's Future Friday, TBR 2015 Predictions, a series of thought leadership webinars being held each Friday between January 16th and February 13th, 2015. Each Friday, TBR's research teams will share predictions for 2015 and beyond across the hardware, software, cloud, security, devices, professional services, telecom, and digital markets. Top TBR analysts will address the trends, drivers, and the business outcomes they predict will occur throughout the year. The Future Friday webinar series stakes out the status, changes, and key market directions you're going to see happen in the coming year. Before we start, there are a few housekeeping items I'd like to cover. First, we'll be recording today's session and posting it on our YouTube site, TBRI channel. We encourage you to visit our channel and watch this presentation or any others that we've posted. Second, we'd like to hear your opinions and thoughts on the material we're presenting. Please send any questions or comments through the Q&A or chat function. The presenters will address them at the end of the session. Or if you'd like to set up a client inquiry for more detailed discussion, please reach out directly at the end of the webinar, and we'll be happy to set up a call. Third, we will send out the slides to everyone who registered for today's webcast within 24 hours of the conclusion of the webinar. You can also find the slides as well as our thought leadership pieces and other webinars and commentaries on SlideShare, and I will post the URL for that in the chat function as we go through the presentation. I'm Stuart Williams. I'm the Vice President of Research here at Technology Business Research, and leading our software webinar are Jeff Woolacott and Matthew Healy. And joining us today are Megan McGrath, Kelsey Mason, and Andrew Smith. In the Future Fridays webinar series, TBR research teams provide business analysis on established trends that will continue in 2015, new trends, and long-term predictions for the field. For the software market, over the next year, enterprises will look to leverage investments that they have made into transformation, such as cloud capacity for applications, analytics, and other workload-related spending, with new but evolutionary additions to their environment in 2015 and beyond. In many cases, the large cornerstones have been deployed, and the investments will be in the integration and addition to these cornerstones. Considering this, TBR developed predictions for 2015 and beyond. The three types of predictions are trends that will continue into 2015. These are current trends TBR expects will continue or accelerate in the coming year. New trends for 2015. These are maturing trends from 2014 that TBR believes will expand in the coming year. And longer-term trends. These are opportunities that TBR believes will begin this coming year but will not have full effect on the industry for several years. Now that I've set the stage, let me hand the call off to Jeff.
Thank you, Stuart. If we can head into the first slide, we'll jump right through the continuing trends. And the first two that we have are really a combination of what is going on with the cloud. That clearly is here. It's a deployment differential. When you think about it, software is the automation of intellectual property, and then whether you deliver it on-premise or via the cloud is more of a monetization shift. What we've seen clearly is that the proof of concept we're past that stage. And what we see is a split at about the $250 million mark in the company size, with the deployment of private cloud being far more interesting and desired by the private cloud, or I'm sorry, by the large enterprises rather than by the SMB space. Innovation, as we have known historically, has been handled by large enterprises who could afford the infrastructure they had to buy in order to innovate. The cloud monetization scheme and delivery mechanism frees that up such that there can be more and more innovation and hence more and more interest in private cloud for those deployments. I want to ask Matt to add in here, and then we will jump over to the SMB space, which is our prediction 2 component.
Right. I don't think I'm out too far on a limb for anybody on the phone that says the cloud is here. I really think I'm on pretty solid ground on that one. The question is, what cloud is here? Is it private? Is it public? And what we're seeing is for the very large enterprises, they tend to be more interested in the private cloud. I am not saying that they are not interested in the public cloud. I am saying that they are more interested in private cloud. And what we see from the very large enterprises is a history of looking for value by deciding, here are all the things that we need, and here's all the customizations that we need to the software in order to run our business the way we want to run it. You can't do that in the public cloud arena. You pretty much get what the public cloud provider gives you. But in a private cloud environment, you can kind of customize your software to the way in which you want it, and private cloud offers them an opportunity to reduce the cost. So for the very large enterprise, the definition of value is, here's all the things we do, or here's all the things that we need. Now how can I get it as cheaply as possible? And private cloud is giving them some options in that area. So that's why we feel that we're going to see a lot more interest in private cloud from the large enterprise perspective. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff, who's going to jump to the next prediction, which is remarkably close to this one.
Yes, it is. This is on the SMB space, and what we're seeing here is they have a greater affinity, as the chart and the arrows on it depict, they have a greater affinity for the public cloud, and as Matt alluded to, it's what's good enough for the budget that they have. Now, what this has also done is it's shifting where innovation, or at least a piece of innovation, is going on, because more innovation will happen at the SMB space for the large vendors, because at that space it's manageable. If you're trying to stitch together 3 bottling plants for an ERP install, that's easier than if you're trying to do it globally for Coca-Cola or wherever, because in that situation, the magnitude of what you're trying to do, if you run into some technological hurdles, is going to be a greater glitch. So the SMB space, I believe you're going to start seeing some more innovation down there on the underlying fundamental infrastructure integration components, and then the business value and the strategy-led pieces will then again be back up at the large enterprise space. But Matt, what would you like to add within the SMB focus that we have here?
Right. So in the last prediction, I said that that the definition of value for the large enterprises was, here's all the things that we need to do. Now, how can I do it as cheaply as possible? That's one way to achieve value. The other way to achieve value is what the SMB is doing, saying, here's our budget, and here's our list of requirements. How many requirements can I get for my given budget? Same equation, just looking at it from the other side, depending on what's the dependent versus independent variable on this one. Public cloud oftentimes offers them the most features for their fixed budget size. Once again, as I said before, not saying SMB is not interested in private cloud, saying that they are slightly more interested in public cloud because it offers them the opportunity to get the features and the functions that they need within their defined budget. So they're not doing everything, but they're doing enough, and it gets them the most values, the most features for their budget. So those are really the two sides, and as I said, these predictions are very closely intertwined with each other because, you're looking at that $250 million a year in revenue breakpoint between the two. It's not all going to go to private in one and all the public in the other. There's going to be a blend. It's just the budgeting pressures and the dynamics of the organization are slightly different for each of these two types, and as they get bigger, they need more private. As they're smaller, they need more public. I think we've pretty much covered that. Jeff, you want to jump on the next one here?
Yeah, let's get into the third one. Now, this is a statement. What we're looking at here is it's a codified trend, but what you basically have is, with the proof of concept of the cloud, then you have large customers who want to move off sooner than their on-premise support contracts might allow. So what you have seen, or what we have seen in the market, are some transformations there, and we'll let Megan McGrath talk to this because we've been working very closely on it.
Thanks, Jeff. So as we're seeing customers look towards cloud-based solutions, we're also seeing that traditional vendors are and will continue to set up migration programs that are specifically designed as defensive tactics to prevent market share erosion. Vendors are more likely to retain their existing customer base by making it easier for those customers to stay with the current vendor and just migrating existing on-premise solutions to the cloud. It will be imperative for vendors to incent and guide customers through the migration of existing solutions to the cloud, rather than waiting for the next upgrade cycle to end, and thereby giving customers the opportunity to start with a new cloud vendor.
Excellent. Thank you, Megan. So really what we're seeing here is our first two predictions, and once again, on very solid ground, cloud is here. Customers want it, and they're going to go to cloud. So now the question becomes, if you accept that very large applications generally have a 7 to 10-year install base time in between major revisions, if you're a big applications provider like an SAP or a Microsoft or an Oracle, you don't want to wait 7 years to migrate. Your customers don't want to wait 7 years to migrate onto the cloud because that's where they want to be. You certainly don't want to force them to have to wait, because if you force them to wait, when they do migrate to the cloud, they're going to pull an entire list of a variety of different vendors, and they're going to do a full evaluation. So by putting things out like SAP did with allowing organizations to reallocate some of their maintenance spend into cloud licenses, and Oracle quickly followed suit with their customer to cloud program, vendors recognize where the customers want to go, they're facilitating that migration, and they're using it to make sure that their customers stay with them rather than switch to another vendor as part of a massive upgrade cycle. And we think that this is going to be here to stay, because the cloud is coming, and if the vendors don't help you get there, they're not going to be around for very much longer. And I don't know any major vendors whose plan is to not be around for very long.
Right. The point is where, before we jump into the next prediction, is just that the vendors are laying these things out as a codified marketing program, when in actuality what they're doing is reacting to a market necessity, because that's what customers want, and they have to provide it to them, because when you're in the middle of a massive transformation, as we are right now, the power of the incumbency is at its lowest. So you want to do whatever you can to maintain that existing account base as they transfer their IT infrastructure more and more into a cloud-based setup.
You can try to hold back the ocean.
Yeah.
You will fail, but
right.
You can try.
Okay, next prediction. Now we're moving into new trends, and the bubble on this slide as we go off to it. This slide is a preview. This webinar should have gone off last Tuesday, but because of the snow, it was canceled, and we're doing it on February 4th. We have split the software benchmark. This one comes out of the infrastructure management benchmark, and you'll see a whole bunch of changes in here. We've color-coded companies by sort of 3 different aggregates, so we can do some compares here. But what this shows, and what we have heard qualitatively, is the IT organization skills and requirements are transforming very, very rapidly, and they're transforming on 2 different planes. And the 2 different planes here also set up by taking a look at sort of cloud components. And the reason why I'm circling these is you see Red Hat and VMware, who are rivaling out there for what everybody is talking about of being the cloud operating system, and all that means. You have VMware piggybacking off of vSphere and getting into NSX and AirWatch to broaden their base, if you will, leveraging their early lead in server virtualization. So this is for professional services opportunities within infrastructure management as we've defined it. So this is not apps, this is database, middleware, operating system security, and the basic system management functions that go with it. So this kind of opportunity is helping IT on the axis of how do we manage technology now that technology is coming to us in this form factor? What do we have to do? It's different from, looking for the blinking lights and swapping out drives. It's much more software defined. It's a broader challenge. Now you look at the basket that's sort of lower growth to negative growth over here on the left, and what you have here is really the mature entrants, and some of what's going on there is the breaking down of ITO deals and smaller engagement sizes. But where they're going to be doing a lot of services work is going to be more on the consulting, the strategy-led side, which is to help IT become more responsive to lines of business. Because we've detached what compute can do for business from your ability to buy the iron, what it means is you can use it in much more innovative ways, and that requires a whole lot of business transformation in business process management, reevaluation, and redesign. So we see this area as IT has a gap in skills. They are sort of bifurcating a little bit between the traditional management, which is now where cloud components are coming up because they have to learn that, as well as having to pivot more into a management consulting role within inside their own organizations where they're going to need the help. And this is where IBM is making a big bet in their reorganization to come after Accenture in that fashion. So there's a lot on this slide, but this is what we're seeing now is not only a relook at how vendors monetize what they do, but a relook on how IT serves their line of business. And Matt, I was all over the place. Is there anything?
No, you were the driving force behind that prediction, so I think you summed it up pretty well. I could reiterate what you said, but I think that's kind of a waste of everyone's time.
All right, so I was on a roll letting the Germans bomb.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's move to prediction 5. Okay, this one's I'll tee this up very quickly to Matt. This is on the integrating and embedding of analytics into applications in the M&A, particularly around the smaller data visualization vendors as analytics starts to just get woven in.
Right. So we're seeing a lot of organizations, a lot of big applications providers start to embed analytics in their applications. The big announcement at Dreamforce, or one of the big announcements of Dreamforce, was that Wave their analytics platform was being built into SFDC. SAP has done some interesting things with Lumira being built in around HANA, and so you're getting a lot more analytics built into the actual application. Now, analytics are great. They're very powerful tools, but what everybody discovered was if you can't visualize the data in a way that you can present it to somebody whose first name is Global Vice President or Executive Vice President in a way that that person can understand, the analytics don't really get you very far. And so there's been a real push for a lot of startups around data visualization. You saw guys like Burst and Click and Tableau and Splunk to a lesser degree in pure visualization. But all of these are trying to figure out how to best present data in a way that makes it understandable. As various customers have started to use some of these smaller vendors, and as the applications providers start building these analytics capabilities into their applications, we think there's going to be plenty of opportunities for partnerships and maybe even some M&A activity around the data visualization vendors. So if you think about the partnership that SAP just entered into a while back with Burst, this makes total sense for everybody involved. Some of SAP's customers are using Burst. They like Burst. SAP would like to move them to Lumira, but if they're comfortable with it, why don't I just have them on them, allow them to continue to use Burst on HANA? SAP deploys yet another instance of HANA, and Burst now all of a sudden has the SAP ecosystem and customer base open to them. Win-win for everybody involved. Based on that, I foresee a lot more of these data visualization providers to start entering into similar type partnerships or even being acquired by some of the application providers. Customers that are using them want to keep using them. Applications providers want them to use them on their applications. Everybody wins here. And so as a result of that, we really see a lot of activity in that particular area. And so that's the real guts of this prediction. Jeff, comments, or do we want to jump to the next one?
I'll just add a little bit. I didn't put it down as a prediction. I could be totally off base on this one, but I look at the activity here and wonder if in a year or two something may not emerge out of this as a bundle that will be a competitor to Office, because you have business productivity that was the output to visualize through Excel and PowerPoint, the old business productivity apps that were less embedded with analytics. So Simplicity talks about this a little bit too. So if we're going to start piecing together things that are easier to get the output in the business correspondence that has these things in, I mean, they have a de facto standard. I'm not denying that, but if they've got a threat, maybe it's going to come from the activity that comes out of here. But it's way too far out.
That's way too far out. Right. And a more reasonable near-term solution will be a greater integration between somebody like an SAP and a Burst or a Click or an Oracle and Office. Let's face it, that PowerPoint, Word, and Excel are the de facto standards.
Correct.
Across the board for every executive out there. They all know how to use Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So you're not going to roll in with something that's not Word, Excel, or PowerPoint. Now, if you're really forward-looking and you start connecting your analytics engine so that you can output directly to PowerPoint so that you can then present it, or output directly to Excel so you can do some calculations there, use Excel as the front end, use Word as the front end, I think that that's a lot more reasonable as a near-term thing.
Right.
Whether that eventually evolves into a competitor to Office or whether that further cements Office as the de facto standard, yet to be determined. I would bet it further cements Office.
Oh, if we're here in 17, we'll know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can listen to Jeff and I do this again in 2020 when we figure out whether or not I was right or wrong.
That's right. I'll be dialing in from the home, but yeah. All right, let's move to the next one. Prediction 6. We're going to have Andrew Smith go through this. This is the history of the platform wars. If you take a look real quickly, we know what the earlier one was with CISC and RISC, and that battle for dominance in the 90s. And then we had the operating system and Hyper-V wars. And what we're seeing here, we believe, is a new platform war. Andrew's been studying this quite a bit, so I want to turn it over to Andrew to tell you what he thinks here.
Yeah, so like Jeff quickly mentioned, you know, there have been a couple major fronts that this battle has been fought on in the past, and before with infrastructure hardware and with OS and virtualization, the majority of the conversation shifted towards price performance and cost and how to get the most out of your infrastructure, how to get the most out of your storage, how to get the most out of your applications. Now, especially thinking about 2015, we're seeing kind of the battle shift to the data layer. And what we mean by that is, you know, vendors like SAP with HANA and Oracle 12c, not only is it about gathering the most data and being able to deploy that to customers, but it's about how to integrate applications, how to attract developers, and how to attract software developers to write applications using that data. It's about how to get the most value out of that data. And, you know, we know vendors are becoming better and better about collecting data for their customers, but now it's about how to get the most value out of that data and how to provide the platform that kind of becomes the de facto standard for working with that data. And it's, you know, it doesn't just affect how back office workers use your applications. It also affects your branding and how enterprises interact with your customers. So this is really kind of a battle for focused on data that's going to be fought, you know, all the way from the back office to customers, and we're reaching an important tipping point moving into 2015.
Yeah, Matt, you got
Right. And so I really and Andrew and I have worked very closely on this one. The rise of the platform wars has been going on forever, and we're just looking at it from an infrastructure software perspective. I don't want to get into platform wars around networking and Ethernet and everything else. But what we're basically seeing here is when you talk to any major executive or any CEO or, high-end executive at a large company, and what they're increasingly saying is the data is the lifeblood of my company. Right. And that is what I live and die on. IT vendors are generally not stupid. They know this, they hear the same things that we hear, and so what they very quickly realized is if they become the platform on which the lifeblood of the enterprise is stored, then they become indispensable to the enterprise, and there's nothing a vendor likes more than becoming indispensable to a customer, because it pretty much guarantees a revenue stream for a very long time. So we expect that this fight on the data level is going to be very intense and very significant, and I think people are going to come at it from different ways. Oracle's trying with 12c, SAP with HANA, VMware and EMC with the store everything, analyze anything with Pivotal. IBM is rolling out Bluemix and saying develop all your apps on Bluemix and store all your data on Bluemix. Microsoft with Azure, use that as your platform. It integrates with all the Microsoft apps. But the common theme in all of this stuff is store the lifeblood of what differentiates you on our platform. And it's going to be, from an industry analyst perspective, I am so excited because there's nothing better than watching a platform war fight.
Right. And with each of these, I was talking to Matt about it after the earnings calls for it was Microsoft and VMware that I had listened to, and what you're hearing, I think, is these moves where they're taking the flagship product from the legacy perspective of the, back before the cloud was here in our earlier predictions, and they're drastically cutting the price and just pushing it out there to get over to the new cloud-based infrastructure on these things as almost a loss leader. It's putting Office for free on Android and Apple devices. It's setting up vSphere with the additions of NSX and AirWatch and getting that out into AirCloud to push that further out and show we virtualize servers, we can now do the network, we can now do your devices. it's IBM trying to ride it with Watson. There's all these different pieces. Obviously, SAP HANA is their big bet too. So it is going to be fun to watch. It's going to be very aggressive. There will be value to be had by end customers, and watching the shifts in the revenue streams will be the business model analysis that we'll be doing in the benchmarks and the syndicated reports over the next 4 to 6 quarters as this really starts to accelerate, in our opinion. And with that, let's jump to 7. These are the longer-term trends. The first one we have up is this came to us, to Matt and I, from Kelsey Mason, who's going to speak to it, of pseudo-natural language interfaces. So, Kelsey, go.
Thanks, Jeff. So this prediction really came about after looking at a few different trends, the rise in enterprise data and an increasingly mobile enterprise, coupled with the growing need for analytics, and customers really just wanting to improve the use of their enterprise apps, make them easier and more in line with how they interact with the consumer apps that they interact with in their personal lives. So looking at these 4 factors together, we think that consumer-based pseudo-natural language interfaces will become more tightly integrated with enterprise applications. And just to clarify, these PNLIs that we're talking about are things like Siri, Microsoft Cortana, and Google Now. So if we're looking at enterprises and kind of the dynamics of their employees, the sales teams are arguably the most mobile employees within an organization, so CRM apps will likely be the first wave of business apps integrating with these PNLIs. Use will be both from a simple command point of view and also from more deep dive querying. So the simple commands would be like, call Joe Smith from company X. That would be pulled from a CRM database where normally you would need that contact in your phone's contact list, or adding a contact to a CRM system. And Microsoft really already has this functionality when they integrated Cortana with Dynamics a few months back, but this is mostly command-based to date. Where I think the most value is going to come in, though, is in the analytics piece and tying back to the visualization that Matt talked about in one of our other predictions. So there's already a small community of startups that have created PNLIs for companies like Salesforce, where you can query the data within Salesforce and then see visualizations and dive deeper. And so like Matt said, on the visualization startups, this is kind of a niche community within there, and they're going to be the potential partner opportunities for the vendors like Microsoft, Google, Apple that have PNLIs already in their hardware and want to extend that and add more analytics and enterprise-grade functionality.
Yeah, basically, and when Kelsey came up with this, I couldn't have been more supportive on this, 100% behind it. The fact of the matter is that consumer applications and consumer technologies right now are easier to use than enterprise applications. I don't know too many people who go home and look at their iPhone or their Android device and think, wow, that's a whole lot more complicated than the enterprise software that I usually deal with. If only this could be more like the enterprise apps that I work with on a daily basis. I actually kind of see people doing the exact opposite. And the fact is that we're seeing consumerization of IT, we're seeing some real breakthroughs in that, and the enterprise vendors are going to look at it and say, you know, it's so easy for Cortana to do it, and I just have to talk into it, and Cortana can take care of it. What if I mesh that with my CRM system? What if I mesh that with my ERP system? What if so rather than having to figure out and select all the variables to create my chart, if I just told Cortana or Watson, right, I need a chart of who my top performing salesperson in the East Coast is, and then, boom, it cropped up with this person's doing really well, and, you know, all of the different options. And that's the kind of ease of use that we see enterprise software needing, and the innovation on the customer side is, I think, driving in that direction. So I'll turn it back over to Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, this is, you look at consumerization, you're talking to our peers over on the devices side that came back from consumer electronics and wearables and all these things. Voice is the way we're going to be doing it. It's no longer, we went from keyboard to swiping a tablet to just speaking, and over time we'll see more and more of that, I do think. Let's move to prediction 8. This is a fun one. Matt and I have been bouncing this one around for over a year. It's when are the cloud pure plays? I mean, few of them, some do, but very few do, are turning a profit. There's a lot of hyper growth going on. They have a lot of talk within there. If you read these 10Ks and 10Qs, there's a lot of the dog ate the homework justification for the negative returns right now, talking about gap standards. You're hearing it with all these people as they transition from license to subscription. One of these days, investors are going to want to start seeing the returns, and when that hits or doesn't hit, you know, is this a dot-com bubble, or will they come out of it? And I don't want to steal your thunder, Matt, so go.
What I love is it's not fair. GAAP isn't fair to me because it doesn't accurately represent what's going on in the business. Well, yeah, actually it kind of does. I mean, you could argue it's not perfect, but it puts everybody on a level playing field. And I may not really understand the valuations, and I may not understand the gap level at the level that some of the CEOs of the born on the cloud plays that have these tremendous valuations. But I grew up in a Wall Street house. My younger brother runs a hedge fund, and what I can tell you is at the end of the day, investors want to see profits and return. And if they don't see profits and return at some point in time, then they start looking elsewhere to get profit and return. You know, we can go into whether efficient markets work or don't work or all of these very technical things, but at some point in time, the born on the cloud guys are going to have to start showing a GAAP profit. And if they don't, well, we saw. I mean, I wanted to be a little melodramatic by putting an image of NASDAQ from 95 to 2002 up here. I'm not saying we're at the peak. I'm not saying we're over the peak. I'm just saying that this is a chart we should all think about and we should all look at when we start trying to value the born on the cloud providers, because who was it, Tom Cruise? Show me the money. And at some point they're going to have to do that, and if they don't, the valuations are going to correct. That is what Wall Street does.
Right. This is a VC buddy of mine, when he's reading business plan, says he goes along and along, and he always waits for the point where they say, you know, the snake charmer has to come out and get him in the bags to go, oh, here's where the snakes come out. In the born on the cloud modeling, the place where I go, and here's where the snakes come out, is the statement that they have to spend a lot now, and when the renewal rates come,
when the renewals come in, everything will be great. And when the renewals come in, and you just have to wait for my renewals, and that is 100% true. But when you start looking at modeling this stuff out, you're trying to look at renewal rates in the 95, 96, 97% range. Now, they may achieve it. They may not. But that's where the magic is going to happen. And if they can pull that off, if the born on the cloud guys can do that and pull this forward, then yeah, these valuations might be valuable. But if you start seeing renewals at the 60, 70% rate, when I start seeing those, I got to tell you, I will be on the phone to my younger brother with some great short ideas.
Yeah, that's what's coming up. That's what we should see. You know, we're tracking people like Salesforce on this. They're one of the earliest.
Now, Workday, you know, pull them out one after the other. If anyone from those companies are on, I'm not saying you're dead. I'm saying that we have to wait and see what those renewals are. And if they're good, you're great. If they're not, you're in trouble.
Right. With that, we'll
actually, I'm going to go with one more. I'm going to go off script with a somewhat bonus prediction, given that it's Friday. I'm predicting Seattle 21, New England 10, from the heart of New Hampshire.
Great.
All right. Great, Matt. Some time for questions.
Yeah, great, Matt and team. Thank you very much. We've had some questions come in the Q&A function. Again, please think about the different predictions that the team have made, and if you have any questions, happy to jump into them now. So as we go through this, early on, we had a question about any particular software segments that SMB, I guess the SMB segments are consuming more that are different from the enterprise space. So this is about the consumption volume or consumption patterns of software that the SMBs are consuming. So how is that different from the enterprise space? So what are some of the patterns? Is enterprise doing more heavyweight analytics, perhaps? You know, what does the team think as we go around the horn here?
Matt, you want to take lead?
So in terms of consumption patterns for the SMB, there's an interesting process that SMBs go through, and it's very similar to what countries go through as they go from nascent to mature. A very small organization basically runs everything on Microsoft Office, and we're looking at the 5 to 10 employee type of companies. As they start getting up into the 50, 100, then they start looking for things like CRM. As they get above that, they start looking for ERP, and then what they discover is that the third phase of software consumption requires system and network management, because managing a full-on ERP and CRM system is more complicated than managing Office. And so after that, you then start getting databases and structured databases and the systems and network management software. You then start seeing analytics, because I've got all this data. If I've got all this data, might as well analyze it. And then the next phase of development is applications again. You find the problems in your business, and it turns out there's an app for that. And so that tends to be the process that people go through. When you start getting into the 500 to 750 employee type of range, most of those organizations are already through that. They've figured out what they need to do. They have a suite of homegrown applications. They're doing all of the analytics. For them, the difference in consumption patterns is much more focused on how they want to buy them rather than what they need. And so that's where I got into the budget constraint and how many requirements can you solve versus here are all my requirements, who can do it the cheapest. So I think, does that get to?
Yeah, this is Stuart Williams. I think one of the other patterns that we see emerging now is not having the requirement to build all those database or the infrastructure elements as you grow your business. So the SMBs are reacting to the availability of more complex software for managing their teams, for managing their projects, for communicating with their clients, and as well as incremental growth in the back office capabilities. We see companies like Intuit offering very, very easy to consume models that are driven by cloud delivery. So, we anticipate that many of there's going to be a lot of small businesses that are going to grow in the next mid-markets in the next years, and some of those are going to get even bigger. So as these firms mature, as Matt lays out that life cycle, we anticipate them, and as the market brings more complex cloud-delivered solutions to market, there's going to be a match there. But eventually, businesses need differentiated applications because they need to compete. They have proprietary IP, and so they're going to want to bring things back in-house in areas where they are workloads where they differentiate. So we don't see the people, small businesses staying all on the cloud all the time. They're going to go to a hybrid model eventually.
I think we're going to just move to the next one.
Yeah, let's go to the next question. So this is another one about, do you believe embedded analytics will have an impact on CPU and storage requirements, or are you thinking these will be more cloud-based services? I think this is talking about the app.
Yeah. So I think it will have a impact on CPU and storage. I also think it will have a bigger impact on the networking side of things, because as you start trying to collect data from everywhere, but that may be a more telco-focused issue. I do think it will have an impact. I think it will have an impact both inside the organization and outside of the organization. But I don't think it's going to result in any panic moments for the customers. The reason I say this is that the data requirements, I remember back in 2009, 2010, talking about data scaling and being at storage network world, where people were saying we're getting way too much data and the scaling is insane. And now we started getting big data and analytics. So the amount of media attention and analyst attention on this, customers know that this is coming. So while it will be an impact, it's checking your smartphone and realizing that there was a snowstorm and so there's a 4-hour delay on 95. Well, okay, there's going to be a delay, but that means I have to leave 4 hours earlier to get where I'm going. People know this is coming, so they're beginning to plan for it. They're going to be able to scale for it. They're going to know what to do. This isn't something that's going to crop up and hit them very quickly. So there will be an impact, but I don't think it's going to result in panic. or bigger problems.
Right. There'll be different workarounds of do you take the data to the app or bring the app to the data. There's the hybrid cloud movement of these things.
And there's been so much talk that these planning cycles are going on right now, and the conversation about, well, we got to do a lot of analytics on this, and it tends to be an app that doesn't have linear scaling, and it's not predictable, and so maybe that's an app that we migrate to the cloud, because when it bursts, we know that we'll have, since it's residing on the cloud, we can scale it immediately there rather than doing it on premise. But this app, we know it's so all of this very careful planning can go on in advance of the impact, which I think from a customer perspective will lessen the OS moments, if you know what I mean.
Okay, next
yep.
one.
So here's another question here on prediction number 7. Will this spur, this is about the demand for easier mobile interaction will spur demand for an adoption of the PNLIs. Will adoption of the pseudo-natural language interface spur another platform war? Similar to prediction 6, based around cognitive computing or machine learning, meaning IBM Watson versus Microsoft Azure machine learning, but accessed via a friendly voice.
Yes, friendly voice, a companion unobtrusive, right? So from my perspective, it may trigger a platform war, but trying to figure out where the next platform war beyond data is going to be is too far out. I'm not willing to say this is the next platform war. There will be another one after data. I am not smart enough to know what it is. And I think what it will be will be determined in a large perspective by who wins the platform war. I mean, we had an operating system fight between Linux and SUSE and RHEL and Windows and AIX and all of these things. And for a lot of aspects, the Windows operating system platform war kind of, from a customer perspective, kind of went away a little bit, because when you virtualize it, I can just put any operating system I want in, and so there was no real dominant winner in that, which is why in that particular, there was another chat, I think, that said, well, how come we didn't mention those? The fact is that the winner of that operating system virtualization platform war was VMware, because VMware kind of obfuscated the need for a lot of these other things. Yes, Microsoft is still fighting with RHEL, and RHEL is still fighting with SUSE. Absolutely. Going to go on forever. From a customer perspective, you virtualize it, and then, you're off and running. So I'm not sure whether or not this is the next platform war that's going to happen. It clearly is one of them. Of all of the smoldering fires, I don't know which one's going to turn into a full-on forest fire.
All right. So here's another question on prediction number 8 about the stock price and performance normalizations. Question is, if valuations are correct, would you expect some M&A consolidation of born-on-the-cloud vendors? And I think we're already starting to see that. I mean, companies like GoGrid that have been in the field for a long time getting acquired. We're seeing cherry picking of the key capabilities. IBM buying software is not a mistake. It's quite intentional given the field. So yes, we do see some shakeouts and consolidation happening. And I believe that we're going to touch on that some more in our cloud predictions webinar that we're going to do next week.
Yeah, I would fully expect to see this continue. I mean, once you've perfected, one of the things that I think particularly legacy vendors are struggling with is the shift in the sales cycle from the way you sold licenses to the way you sell subscriptions. I mean, the line we've been using internally here is blue suit to add to cart. And I would also add in the middle, I saw it in the blog, I wish I could remember the gentleman's name to give him credit, but blue shirt, meaning inside sales that's really there to harvest and farm the existing accounts for the cross-sell, upsell opportunities. So once you've perfected that, I can go all the way back to the way CA was just buying up small software pieces to run through a sales distribution pipe. So if you have an underlying infrastructure that's interoperable, picking up the SaaS applications and bringing them into the fold to just scale through an existing best-in-class sales go-to-market network that is still evolving out there. This is why the valuations are so tricky. Absolutely, I think you're going to see some M&A in this space.
Yeah, and I'm the dark horse here. I think that there are, I'm the lone voice out in the woods. It's not that I don't think that there's going to be acquisitions and the consolidation. I just think that it's going to take longer to get to the consolidation and acquisitions than some of my colleagues do. Maybe it's because I've lived through a few things where, you know, people have said the market can stay irrational for longer than you can stay liquid. And so the valuations can stay high for longer than you think that they can. And so I just think it's going to take longer. I think it's going to happen. I'm just thinking end of 2016, 2017 is when a lot of the real consolidation would happen. And some of my colleagues think it'll happen a little bit sooner than that. I don't disagree it's going to happen. Maybe it's going to take a little longer.
It'll be, to your point, it'll be when renewal rates start materializing.
True. It'll be
when they start to materialize, we'll know who's got it and who doesn't.
Right, exactly. And the interesting thing is, if you're one of these companies that is going to be consolidated and acquired, the general rule of thumb is if you're not one of the first 2 or 3 that's going to be acquired, you're really going to be in trouble.
Yep.
Because what you end up seeing is big vendors pick up the 2 or 3 that they want the best, and then the other ones all effectively die. So, you know, maybe that'll accelerate it, and I'm wrong, it'll happen sooner. I don't know. Please join us on January 29th, 2016, and we'll review whether I was right.
So we're coming to the end of our Q&A session. Here's another interesting question about consumption patterns. How do you see the self-service database as a service data platforms evolving, and how could they impact the SI/AO services segment, systems integration, application outsourcing service segments? So, so obviously, I have a quick opinion on this, and I'll turn it around to everybody else. When you have a capability for a database, there are going to be those people who need it. They need to own that database. They're going to make heavy modifications to it. There are going to be other use cases where people want access to the database, but they don't want to run it. They don't want to administer it. That's good. That's an outcome-based delivery of that technology, almost using it as a platform. And then there are going to be the people who are going to want to integrate that into their application logic, right? So a developer who maybe they don't have complexity, or there's something in the database platform that they can use to develop the cloud application that they want to deliver. So yes, I think that these are increasingly viable options for people who are building IT systems. They need to deliver workloads against specific requirements. And it's great that we see the evolution of the market in this space, because it gives you the chance to pick exactly the model that you need to right now, and one that will give you some runway to grow, rather than just having a single model of an instance on a server. You know, let's go back to the old days. So, yep.
What I would say in very general or high-level terms on this is the impact and pressure on SI and AO is it's going to shorten the size and scope of the engagements. An example that's somewhat related is I was talking to an SI and end customer, a C-level interview that I did with a major SI, and I just asked him, well, give me a for instance of the old opportunity you had and the new opportunity. So he said a Siebel CRM rip and replace was a 10-month deal that was worth about $500,000, and moving over to Salesforce and migrating everything up and over to the cloud was 3 months and $75,000. So if you just think of the go-to-market behind all that as an SI or an AO in this area, you've got to triple the transactions and therefore cut the sales expense in dollars to a third to be more efficient. The reason for these will be as these tools and utilities. Some of the things that will come up too will be the aggregation of community cloud, so you can pull the data set and you get charged by the analytics query. So you're not going to build it all for your own. You're going to extract what you need back onto your on-prem, but you may subscribe to these services. And people who become adept at getting that done and quote-unquote industrialize it will be able to scale it down market. I mean, that's the whole point behind IBM Analytics Answers, which was land and expand, start in the mid-market with what you have, you know, codified and made quote-unquote good enough, and reach further down market because you can do it on a less expensive infrastructure layer, because you can do it on a OpEx basis.
Well, that brings our predictions, software predictions session to an end. I'd like to thank the software team for their work, and thanks everyone for your questions. You can follow the TBR team on Twitter at the handles listed here, and please check out our pages on SlideShare and YouTube as well. Before you sign off today, we'd like to ask you to take a brief survey about our webinar. As we perform our research of the technology companies, we also like to get the feedback on how we're helping our clients, and we would greatly appreciate that. We'll leave the chat function open for another couple of minutes to give folks a chance to ask any last-minute questions, and we'll hope to see you next week when we have more TBR Future Fridays predictions. Thank you.